Christ told the following parable. You can find it in the New Testament. It goes like this. He had this vine dresser. So he was a farmer with his own vine. And he planted an olive tree in the vineyard. Now this is something quite weird. Because an olive tree is planted in an olive grove. Olives were very important in that time for the Roman world. Because from the olive tree you get olives, from olive tree you got olive oil. And olive oil was used as a replacement for soap. It was used for the military, for the shields of the soldiers. And olive oil was also used as oil in general, and also for salads. So olive oil was very important. The world economy back then was driven by olive oil, wine, and bread. Okay? So olive oil was very important. So olive oils were planted in rows in olive groves. Because a tree has a trunk, so a tree is heavy. Therefore a tree takes a lot of moisture from the soil. Of course it rains and the soil becomes wet, but the plants take that water out of the soil again, and they use it to produce leaves, which gives oxygen. A tree takes a lot of water. It needs a lot of water for it to grow and give its fruit. Now a vine also takes water, but a vine is smaller than a tree. Okay? Because a vine is quite thin, and then the branches become heavy on it. Both a tree and a vine, they take water, but a tree takes a lot of water. So this man, for some weird reason, he planted an olive tree in a vineyard. And the olive tree grew. Because you know, a tree doesn't become tall with branches and leaves and fruit within a week. No, you need to wait a couple of years before it's grown. So when the olive tree matured, the vine dresser came to find olives. That's natural, right? If the tree is mature, you should expect fruit on the tree. But in this case, he came, he didn't find any. Next year he came again, during the harvest season, he didn't find any. The third year he came, he didn't find any olives again. And then he said to his manager, this olive tree has been here for a while. Past 3 years I came here to find olives, I didn't find any. Cut it down. Why should the tree stand here and waste the soil? Or in the Bible said to take up space. It comes down to the following. So as I explained, trees take up a lot of water off the soil. And the tree is planted in a vineyard, so the tree would take away much water from the soil at the expense of the vine. So with the tree there taking a lot of water but not producing fruit, it's wasting the water supplies of the soil, which could be used for the vine to produce better and more delicious grapes. So the manager said, sir, hold on. This year we're going to water it. Well, I'm going to water it. I'm going to put dung around it, because animal dung tends to make the soil a bit more fertile. I'll do that. And next year, if it brings forth fruit, we'll leave it. If not, we'll cut it down. Now, a lot of people interpreted this parable in many ways. But just look at the context. Why is an olive tree in a vineyard? Why? I'm not saying that small farmers didn't do that. Maybe they did it so they can have their own olives, but in general, you don't do that. So there's an abnormality right over here. In this case, the farmer had the manager, and the manager agreed with the anomaly. The anomaly grew, and it became a burden for the land. Why? Because that olive tree took up a lot of water from the soil, which meant that the vine in the vineyard, because the vineyard is meant for the vine they had less water, so the fruit weren't at their best, because a lot of the water which was meant for the vine went to the olive tree. But the olive tree produced nothing. And that's quite weird. The moment you see a tree and it's the season, it's the harvest season, you should see fruit on it. Even if the fruit are bad, at least there should be fruit on it. So this was the situation. You had a tree over there that did not produce any life. It did not contribute to the long-term well-being of the vineyard. It only took away. And, well, why was it there? So the owner of the vineyard rightfully said, take it down. But the manager said, let's leave it for a while and just check it out. Now, think about this. In your walk with God, there will be people that will come in your life. Now, your existence, what I'm saying, your daily affairs are not really your life. The term your life, my life is a worldly concept, I know, but I'm using it because I speak the English language, which is a worldly language designed by wizards. So, well, that's what I have to talk to you now, to communicate to you. So that's why I use the expression your life. You will have people that will come into your life which are not sent by God, but Satan sent them. And those people are going to be there. They're not going to cause immediate trouble. They're not going to bring sickness directly to you. But those people will be there. They're not bothering anything directly in your life. But the fact that they are there is a disadvantage to you. And you don't notice it because you're used to it. Because remember, a tree doesn't grow within a month. A tree needs time to grow, to mature, and once it has matured, then it will bring forth a lot of its fruit. Okay? So meanwhile, while the tree is growing, when it's forming its stem and all of that is strong, people get used to the tree being there. So you have this vineyard, and now you have this tree there, and it's an olive tree. You wouldn't know this is an olive tree unless you have knowledge of trees. So this tree is there. There are more trees on the property. So people are used to that tree being there. The tree doesn't block sunlight. It's just a tree, an olive tree in this case. So they're used to it. So you may see the vineyard with the vine and the branches start growing, and you see that tree over there. And you think, well, it's just a vineyard with some trees. But when you look at the context, you will see that that tree shouldn't be there. You will see immediately that that tree is a distraction. You will see that that tree over there is a liability for the vineyard. But if you would tell just anyone who has no knowledge of the situation, who doesn't look at the bigger picture, or who has no knowledge of agriculture, they would tell you, oh, it's just a tree, man. Leave the tree alone. It's good for the birds. And here's another thing. That tree also is a hiding place for birds to build their nests. And if you have birds over there and you have crops growing, or in this case you have grapes growing, what do you think is going to happen? The birds that have their nests in that tree, that olive tree, because they're around, they will likely eat some of the grapes that are still growing. So that olive tree was a big liability. It would attract birds, which would be detrimental to the vine, detrimental to the harvest, and even if it didn't attract birds directly, because there may be other trees over there also, it would drain the soil, which meant that the quality of the vine would go backwards. So in this case, the owner said, cut it down. But the manager, who managed it, said, Lord, just be patient with it. Now listen to what I'm saying here. When the Holy Spirit tells you to cut something down or to uproot something from your environment, just do it. Too often, Believers, so I'm not talking about churchgoers, no worldly people here, I'm talking about believers. Because a lot of believers don't have sufficient knowledge in their walk with God. They still have their own worldly understanding they rely on. So I'm telling you, when the Holy Spirit tells you to uproot something, whether it's a relationship, whether it's your job, or whether it's just a contact somewhere on social media, whatever it is, whenever God tells you to take it down, you take it down. Because in this case, this manager who managed the property didn't see what the owner saw. The owner saw it as it was. He saw reality. He saw this olive tree is here. It doesn't produce any olives, so there's no advantage to it being here, and it's draining the soil, and it attracts birds that will likely ruin the harvest. Why is the tree here? So anyone who looked at the bigger context realized indeed that tree needs to go. But the manager who was used with having the tree there, he thought, well, he thought that the owner was exaggerating, that the owner was overreacting. Listen, God never overreacts. God never exaggerates when it comes to danger. God sees everything. He sees the full picture. We don't see the full picture because we can't, because we're not the Most High. We're not omniscient. We're not all-seeing. But because He is omniscient, because He sees the full picture, He sees everything. And when He sees that something is a liability onto you, He will tell you, take it down. There are times God will not tell you anything. He will just remove certain things from you. And when He removes things from you, He will expect you to agree with His decision. Christ will remove things from you and without explaining it to you, and He expects you to trust Him and to agree with what He did. And you need to learn to agree with Christ. That also means agreeing with Christ, that you pay attention to what He is removing from you. A lot of people think the blessing is that when you get a new car or you get a new house or you have a raise on a job, a lot of people think in material terms, or they think in a hierarchical social way. They think if you get a higher position in the society, that's a blessing. People think that the blessing only means that something is added onto you. Now, I'm here to tell you that often a blessing also implies that something is taken away from you. A blessing isn't always that you get something. Sometimes a blessing means that something is removed. Okay? Again, I'm going to give parables, examples to you, because I'm not just going to say something and expect you to just understand it. Christ didn't do that either. He explained these parables to His disciples and those that were worthy to receive an explanation. That's why He spoke in parables to begin with, to hide knowledge from those that would abuse it. Let's say that your name is Suzanne and you have an aunt called Jenny. Just thinking of two names. And you, Suzanne, you have good contact with this aunt. This aunt is not intruding. She's not intrusive in your affairs or anything like that. She is kind to you. She doesn't afflict you with gossip and all of that. So you think, she's just a good person. She doesn't mean any harm. And okay, maybe that's true. But let's say now you go into prayer, you're fasting. And then the Holy Spirit tells you, Suzanne, remove your aunt from Facebook. And then you think with yourself, Lord, that's my aunt. She knew me since I was a little baby. She was a good support to my mother when dad left us. How can I just remove her from Facebook like that? The Holy Spirit tells you, remove her from Facebook. And, okay, you use the stand, you do it, you remove her. You feel bad about it. But later, you hear that the cops came at your mother's place because they had questions concerning your aunt. Now what happened? Your aunt was involved with a man who was involved in money laundering and human trafficking. So your aunt was involved with this evildoer, and she was enabling this evildoer because she knew that the man was busy with bad stuff, but she didn't know exactly what the bad stuff were, but she knew that the man was bad news. Well, bad news to him. She knew that the man was a bad influence, but because she had this narcissistic attitude, she got relief from the man, she hung around the man. And she began to open completely to this man, telling that man everything about her relatives, also about you. And this man and his partners in crime, they began to check the relatives of his girlfriend, in this case, your aunt. And 2 days before they began their spying on your Aunt Jenny's relatives, means your aunt's family, that includes you, the Holy Spirit told you to remove her. And because you removed her from Facebook, those criminals, when they were going through her friends list, they didn't find you. So now you were not in the sight of criminals. The Holy Spirit protects you in that way. Now think about this example. That aunt was a big liability, just like that unfruitful olive tree was in that vineyard. But because you grew up with that aunt, and you had good memories with that aunt, and you had almost no bad experience at all with that aunt, you thought, she can be there, she means no harm. Hold on a minute. This aunt does not follow Christ. She's codependent, so she has a narcissistic attitude, and she is fleeing from things. So that already is a liability on herself. And now she's also involved with a man that's a harm to the community, and that man feels comfortable because now he can use your aunt as a cover-up so people won't notice what he's doing. So that aunt of yours attracts bad company. She attracts bad company that will harm those around her. So when the Holy Spirit told you, remove her, the Holy Spirit didn't explain to you why, but now you understand why the Holy Spirit told you to do it. So believers, we shouldn't be like this know-it-all manager in that parable that Christ gave, where the manager told the owner, sir, leave it alone for now, for another year. We'll see next year. If it doesn't produce, then I'll cut it down. Don't have this attitude. When God tells you to cut something down, or when God tells you to uproot something, you do it. It can be that you got a new job, or that you have your own business and you suddenly have a lot of revenue. Let's say you have your own business, and for 4 years you had almost no customers, and suddenly you have like 200 customers. You have a lot of revenue, and you're very excited about the news, and you think, I want to call my mom and tell her about it, and also tells you, don't. You want to pick up the phone to call her, the Holy Spirit causes the Holy Spirit withdraws a lot of physical energy from your body, and suddenly you feel so tired. You don't remember your mother, you can't find your mother's phone number anymore. And the Holy Spirit may explain unto you, don't tell her. And you think, Lord, it's my mom. The Holy Spirit tells you, don't tell her. Why? Because this mom may have frustrations that would be triggered by the good news, and now the enemy will use your mom to attract bad company against you. So the Spirit sees it all, and he tells you, don't tell her. It can be that it's 2 o'clock in the morning, everyone else is asleep, and suddenly, but you can't sleep then, and you think, why can't I sleep? You try to sleep, and suddenly it comes up in you to begin to pray. And you think, Lord, why should I pray? But okay, you begin to pray, then you begin to decree and declare, and then later you fall asleep, like an hour later. Now what happens? At that moment that you couldn't sleep, there was contention growing against you. There were ceremonies conducted against you by warlocks and witches. And the danger was growing against you. So when you stood up and began to pray, it all burnt to the ground. And within those ceremonies, explosions occurred and people knew we had to stop. Or it can be that you're in your apartment and you suddenly feel the need to pray, and you begin to pray, and you don't know why, but because you're praying, there's fire emitting out of your energy field into the environment. And let's say that there were kidnappers around, wanted to kidnap someone that lives in that apartment complex. Because you were praying and fasting and you had this fire coming out of you, those men or those women or whoever they were with a dark motive, they couldn't come near the building. So the one they wanted to kidnap is now safe. The kidnapping couldn't occur. Why? Because you were praying. You didn't know what was going on, so you didn't address their evil motive because you didn't even knew these people existed. But because you obeyed the Holy Spirit and began to pray, that evil did not occur. You frustrated that evil. And that's how God often uses believers also. You don't need the full explanation. Just trust God. Okay? Just trust Him. Be at peace.